Hello, Vidur, am I audible?
Yes, am I audible?
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, let's see how many people have joined. Okay, hi guys. Welcome to another webinar from AdmitKard. A very good evening to everyone who has joined us today. First of all, thank you everyone for giving us wonderful response over our last webinars. And we are glad again to be back today to share some awesome insights from our mentor, Vidur. So, for all of you who have joined us today, you have a chat section alongside with you. And you can kindly say hi and let us know that you're there. Yeah. Am I audible to everyone? All right. Hi, Pramit. Hi, Roshan. Hello, Anish. All right. Hi, Arushi. Hi, Hemnath. Hemant, sorry. Yeah, hi. Okay, and for people watching us on YouTube, you have a link in the description to join us here live and clarify all your doubts. Hi, Dharun. Hi, Siddhant. Okay, so we have 31 people joined so far. Great. Yeah, let's just wait another minute for more people to join in and then we'll start. All right, great. Okay, so in this webinar, we are going to share something really interesting. That is the SOP, Statement of Purpose. We already had a webinar in August regarding SOP, where 5 mentors from different universities have shared their experiences of writing SOP. And again, on high demand by the students, we are here discussing about SOP in detail. So I'd like to share, yeah, there's something, okay, yeah. So in this webinar, we'll be sharing how to create a first draft for the SOP and with a live example. So my name is Gaurav from AdmitKard, and I'll be your host today. And let me introduce to our esteemed guest, Vidur. Hi, Vidur. You can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi everyone. Really nice to see everyone here. So I am Vidur. I'm going to be taking you through some basics of writing your first draft. I'm currently a student at New York University, and I'm in a program called Integrated Digital Media. Although I was initially admitted for a program in psychology.
Great. All right. So, okay, so we're going to keep this webinar completely interactive, right? So I would request you to stay active in the chat session. You can ask questions. And in the end, we will have an exclusive Q&A session for you. Also, people watching us on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss any of such webinars from AdmitKard. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, AdmitKard is a venture capital funded edtech startup that was founded in 2016 by IIT IM alumni Vidur Bahl and Rachita Gawa with an aim to mentor students in the college application process. Right. Our founders have been a part of some top global firms like Boston Consulting Group, and they also understand the importance of education. So it is a platform that aims to make the entire application process really effortless and enable you to apply from any place in the world. Well, but specifically from India. Exactly. Yeah. All right. So with the help of AI and mentors, we can handhold you with every process of the application process and make your life easier. All right. So we are really proud to have a strong network of students that are studying across the world who will be guiding you in the future. We have 700 plus scientific mentors from across 200 plus institutes across the world. And we have around 20 plus partners and, around, 10 lakh students, resulting in 2000 plus application process every year. And some of our students are placed in top global universities that you can see here. All right. Please check it. All right, great. So, am I audible to you guys? Can everyone hear
You're
me?
audible to me. So,
All right. Okay, great. All right then. Let's move on. So the agenda today, like I mentioned, is how you write your first draft of the SOP, and Vidur will guide you through the entire, process of what you have to write, how long should the SOP be, and other questions like that. Okay. So the first question is, how important is the statement of purpose in the application process? Vidur, you can take on from here.
all right. So this is actually a question that I get a lot. I asked the same question when I was applying, because my thought process, and I'm sure a lot of you also think the same way, is the university is receiving your CV, your grades, your GMAT, or any standardized testing scores, and then and based on the fact that they already have this info, writing a statement of purpose is not as important as the other things. But in strong contrast to that, the statement of purpose is actually one of the most important parts of your application. This is because, other than all of those numbers and CV points, the statement of purpose is actually the primary way in which the university's admissions committee and admissions officers can get to know you.
Right.
So that is, I would say, the statement of purpose is one of the most important aspects, um, and it is because of this reason.
All right. That's great. Okay, moving on. Okay. So, how to write the first draft of college admission essay statement of purpose?
All right, should I take it from here?
Yeah, sure, sure.
Okay, cool. So this is actually, like, I could give you like a two-step process or something very like simple
All right.
that'll seem like it's very easy, but I'm going to give you a slightly more comprehensive process in which you can follow, like a step-by-step process, which will make it easier for you to write a good SOP first draft.
Okay.
Should we move on to the next slide?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so
All right.
step one, something that I would highly, highly, highly recommend is for you guys to start early in the process. I don't want to give you a specific amount of time to start before, but I'd say you should have enough time to write at least 4 or 5 drafts of your essay. And between each draft, you should give yourself a few days of rest, because in that break period between your drafts is when you will actually get very good ideas on how to improve the next draft of your essay. So I would say at the very least, you should start a month and a half in advance of the deadline. And
All right.
obviously, you can start as early as possible, as early as you want, and do as many drafts um, that is as you are comfortable with. But I would say at the very minimum, 4 or 5 drafts is important.
Okay. Great.
Okay, so this is something that I really want to stress on for everyone. Breaking down the prompt is actually something that a lot of people tend to ignore. And because of this, lots of people miss out on some of the nuances of a prompt. So basically, the prompt is what your university will send to you when you have, based on which you have to write your essay. I'm going to give you an example of later on the next slide, but basically, whether it's for an undergrad essay for the Common App or the UCAS or any other generalized SOP, universities and system app in UCAS generally tend to give you a prompt, which is normally a 100, 200 word um, sentence or 2 sentences that ask you uh, for what they need in the rest of the SOP. So the Common App essay or the US essays tend to be a little bit more creative, but something like that. So what you should do is break down individual aspects of the prompt and figure out what the prompt is actually asking for, and only then begin to think about what you want to write for the essay. So if we move on to the next slide, we can break down a prompt together. Okay, so this is actually a prompt from the 2020-2021 application for the Common App. The prompt reads, some students have a background, identity, interest, or talent that is so meaningful that their application would be incomplete without it. If this sounds like you, then please share your story. So this is a prompt for a lot of people. They might read it once or twice and begin thinking of ideas. But I would highly suggest that you sit down with the prompt and break down what it's asking for. If we move on to the next slide, there's a breakdown. So the prompt basically is asking for a specific part of your identity. It could be a background of yours, it could be a specific interest or talent of yours that you think is essential to the kind of person you are. But, and here's the catch with this specific prompt, it doesn't have to be something that's already in your application. For example, if I'm applying to be a psychology student, uh, and the rest of my application is full of psychology related activities, but I also play the guitar, and that's not very visible in my current application. But I think that playing the guitar is a very integral part of the person I am, and if I can somehow connect it to psychology as well, that would be great. That's what I should write about for this prompt, instead of continuing to write about an internship in psychology that I did.
Right.
That is very visible in other parts of my application. If you have something like this, then you can share it. The Common App, of course, gives you other options as well. And so another thing that's important based on this is the wording of the prompt says share your story, which many people can interpret to mean just describing the activity. But it's very important to, along with say when I started, how I did this, it's very important to say why this activity is important to you, because again the prompt touches upon your story and why it's integral to the person you are. So therefore, it's very important to talk about how that activity or interest is important to you. You can use this essay to show the admissions officers key aspects of your personality that may not be very apparent in the rest of your application.
Right. Okay, Vidur, we have a question here. It's by
Sure.
Kirti. Yeah, she's asking, like, can you tell me what long-term degree objective is?
Uh, what, for example, what my long-term degree objective is?
In general, I guess.
Well, if I'm understanding the question right, I would say that based on what your aspirations are, a degree can help you in gaining a traditional job, whether it's here or there. Also, applying abroad can help begin the process of trying to settle in another country and getting a job in that other country based on where you're applying. Because students that have studied, for example, in the US, that are
Right.
international students, are given a preference
Mhm.
when it comes to their H-1B visas versus people who have not studied there and have studied in schools that were outside of the US. So that is one major
Okay,
motivating factor.
that's great.
All right, we can move on to the next
Yeah.
slide.
All right. Moving on. We
Okay,
have a
so
bad example. Yeah.
yes. So that for this specific prompt, again, I want to stress that all of this is for this one prompt. It's just an example to show you the
Right.
process of breaking down a prompt. But so this is a bad example. So remember that this prompt asks for something that's not necessarily visible in the rest of your application. So I'm going to read out a paragraph that could be a bad example for what you shouldn't do for this prompt. The most integral activity to my application would have to be my interest in coding. I have participated in many coding competitions and won many of these competitions, as you can see from the rest of my application. It's an activity that I enjoy participating in and therefore want to pursue it as a career path. Now, this for a general necessarily bad paragraph, but why it's bad for this specific prompt is because the prompt is asking for things that are not necessarily visible in the rest of your
Right.
application. If your CV, if your scores indicate that you are very good at coding and this is you're applying for coding and all that, if you write for about coding again in this prompt, that's not necessarily what they're looking for, and that's an example of how these prompts can even trick you.
Right.
So I would say this is why it's important to break down the prompt first.
All right.
Okay. Now, if you're not applying to the US or applying to a place where you don't get such a specific and creative prompt like this, there is a way for you to go about this step of the process as well. If it's a more generalized prompt and it doesn't ask for a specific thing like this interest, this, that, what you can do as a way to start off your process is think of 5 qualities of yourself that you want to showcase through your SOP. Just some examples here are that you are a caring person, enterprising, you're extroverted or introverted, openness, and you try to focus on the positive. So you can list down these 4 or 5 um, things about yourself that you want the admissions officer to know based on this SOP. And then that should be the goal in your mind when you think of what you should write to achieve this goal, if there is no specific prompt like we discussed earlier.
Okay, moving on. Right.
All right, so the
Which
next
step I do?
step, yeah, would be to write down all of your ideas. This is fairly simple. I'm sure everyone's understood it already. But basically, keep in mind what your breakdown of the prompt is telling you, or keep in mind the 5 things you want to show about yourself. And based on this, just write down all the ideas you have. It can be stupid ideas, good ideas, amazing ideas. At this step, just write down anything you can think of. In that could be a potential way of answering the prompt or writing your SOP. While you're doing this, I would suggest that if you're thinking of the ideas, look out for specific narratives that you can follow, which would basically be if I'm writing about coding, for example. I can just very basically think in my head. In the introduction of my SOP, I will write about how I got into coding. In the body of my SOP, I will talk about my experience in coding and why it's important to me. And in the conclusion, I will bring it all together, which is not necessarily what you will follow, but it's a good practice to just think about the narrative structure while you're writing down your ideas. It'll help you later in the process.
Okay. So we have a question here from Ankit. He's asking like, what if you have an experience in coding and you want to apply for machine learning or data science?
If you have experience in coding and want to apply for machine learning and data science, well, in terms of your SOP, which is what I can answer this question based on, you can, if you can write well enough on how you will use your experience in coding to relate to data science or machine learning, which I believe is a very strong link between the 3 fields, 2 fields. Then you would think of a narrative structure, like I said, a
Right.
narrative structure which follows how your experience in coding, which you have till now, whether you worked with certain companies or you have internships, how that experience translate to you becoming a good candidate for that university's program in machine learning or data science. That would be the narrative structure that you might think of at this stage. And then obviously we will, through the stage, we will make it more complex and actually write down an essay.
All right. Okay, we also have another question from Kavita. What if your undergrad degree is in a completely unrelated field of your master's? How can you show that you will be a good fit for something you're new to?
All right. So in a situation like this, I have actually gone through something similar, so I can speak from experience. Like I said, I had initially applied to NYU for a degree in psychology, but about 1 year in my degree, I decided that psychology is not something I want to do and want to apply for this different program in the same university called Integrated Digital Media.
Right.
This is not, I had never done anything related to front end web development or anything like that. So the SOP that I wrote for this, I focused on why I would like to change, what is the reason behind me wanting to do something different, and why I think I will be a good candidate for the thing I'm new to, which was digital media for me, and provide some evidence as to as to my claim. Doesn't necessarily have to be experience, but you can talk about what led you to your new interest, uh, factors in the world, if that's what made you interested. If you saw a YouTube video or you did an online course on Coursera or something like that, just talk about the factors that led you to developing your new interest and why you think you would be a good candidate despite your lack of experience.
All right. Okay. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. Yeah, step
All
4.
right. This again is one of the most important parts of this process is to plan and structure your essay. Lots of people, what they do is they have an idea and then they just straight away start writing the essay. I don't think this is a good way to do things. I would highly suggest breaking down, well, like people broke down their prompts. I would suggest breaking down how you want to write your essay before you actually write it. So there's a million and one ways to actually do this, but I'm gonna talk about the way that I use. You may have a completely different method of planning your essays than mine, and if that's what you're comfortable with, please go ahead and do that. But this is how I do it. So I look at the word limit of my essay, which is obviously different for based on what university and what country you're applying to. I look at the word limit, and then I look at the different parts of the essay. Generally, an essay will include an introduction, the first part of a body, which is an explainer slash rise of conflict. Body part two would be the settling of conflict and resolution, and then there's the conclusion. So the first step that I generally do is, suppose I have 1,000 words for my SOP. I will
Mm-hmm.
dedicate a number of words for each of these four. For example, with 1,000 word limit, I want to be around 900 words in total. So I would say 200 words for the introduction, 300 words for the body, 300 words for that, and the remaining words for the conclusion. That's the first step of planning my essay. We can
Right.
move on.
Okay, we have another question from Aditya. He's
Okay.
asking if 3 years graduate psychology degrees are accepted in US or Canada if you want to apply for masters.
Our 3-year undergrad psychology degree accepted in the US or Canada. Uh, I'm going to go out on a limb and say yes, but don't quote me on that. I'm not sure about that. It might depend on which university, which program. Some universities have requirements
Right.
that say no, 3-year degrees are not permittable. For example, a lot of US colleges don't accept LSR or something like that, 3-year degrees, because the
Mm-hmm.
US system is 4 years. So there are some colleges that may accept it. There are some colleges that may not. There's no such general rule.
All right. Okay. Moving on.
All right. So the next part of planning your essay is, once you have written out, I want to say 200 words for this, 300 words for this, 300 words for this. The next step would be to write out detailed pointers. This is just, you're not actually writing your essay at this stage. You're just simply um, writing down simple pointers on what you want to include where. So in the introduction, I'll just write two, three words for each pointer, and I'll be like, okay, introduction, I want to talk about how I got into coding, why I'm interested in coding, and this. Just these three, 4 words, and then I can make slightly more detailed pointers. Don't have to form full sentences at this point or anything.
Right.
I would do this for the full essay. Um, Again, do this however you feel comfortable. Everyone has a different way of planning their essays. I'm just sharing mine. Uh, yeah, and another thing I like to do at this stage is, once I have all of those small pointers written out, I like to draw arrows to connect things. I like to draw circles. I like to highlight. Simple things like this you might think are slightly trivial, but actually when you're doing them, you start making connections in your head as to, if this point makes more sense in the body, then I should move it to the third part of the body, and stuff like that. So if you can use visual cues, that's something that I would suggest. If that doesn't work for you, then that's all right as well.
All right. So we have some basic questions like how many paragraphs should there be and word limit for UK specifically?
Okay, how many paragraphs should there be? There's no necessary formula, but paragraphing is a very important practice in general. Uh, because, and I'll tell you why. Paragraphing has not much to do with grammar as it has to do with visuals. An admissions officer reads hundreds of essays in a week, and if he sees an essay that has no paragraphs and it's just one massive paragraph, that already puts him off, and it's annoying for them to read through it. It's sad that this is how it works, but unfortunately, that's how the system is at the moment. So paragraphing is just a very easy way for, when the admissions officer sees your essay, they will be
Right.
able to, in their head, they'll see spaces and it'll be easier for them. It's also
Okay.
structures out your essay much better. In terms of how many, what's for UK? For undergrad, there is a character limit for the UK, and not a word limit. And there's also a sentence limit. I am not entirely sure as to what those numbers are this year. but a simple Google search would tell you. But the UK generally looks at character limits, which is basically one letter is one character. Um, so that's how that works.
All right.
Okay, step 5. This is now after going through this massive process. I would suggest taking a break after you structured the essay for the first time as well. Take 2-3 days off. Don't think about your essay. Then come back to it. At this point, you are done with 90% of the work of your first draft. You are done with most of everything you have to do. Now, just simply write out the plan. While you're writing out the plan, this is something that happens with me a lot. Even though I have detailed structure, sometimes while writing it out for the first time, I think of different ideas. So you don't have to stick to your plan necessarily, but it's a very good guiding document, um, which is why I've suggested for everyone to do this. Now it's a simple process of just following your plan, thinking of new ideas. That's not necessarily true. But yeah, just follow your plan. You're done with most of your work. You don't have to think too much anymore. Just write it out. And that's at that point, I would say you're done with your first draft.
All right. That's great. Okay. The third question. What information should I include in the statement of purpose?
All right. So this question is actually an interesting question. What you generally think of when you like initially think statement of purpose में क्या include करना चाहिए. A lot of those things are actually what you should include, and some of those things are things that you shouldn't include. For example, the information you should include is at the very basic way. It's a statement of purpose, right? You want to talk about the purpose of why you want to study in the university, but you don't have to address it directly as well. So to answer this question, I'm gonna actually ask a bunch of other questions, and these are the questions that every good statement of purpose should answer on its own. So there's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. Does the essay clearly address the prompt? Yes. Is the essay well organized? Yes. Grammatical errors all. Now, these are slightly bigger content questions. Does the essay clearly show the student's own voice and personality? This is very important. The statement of purpose should, for all intents and purposes, the statement of purpose is a way for the admissions officers to get to know you, right? So, in addition to being a quantitative document where you talk about this point, this point, this point, and this is why I will be a good student, the essay should have your own voice. It should show your personality in the way you write it. That's very important. Does the essay show that the student is a good candidate for admission? Again, a very important question. This would align very well with statement of purpose. So definitely you must talk about why you think you have to sort of make arguments about why you think you will be a good student for this specific program that you're applying to. So you talk about your why you have that interest, what do you want to do with it in the future, etc., etc., etc. Yeah. So in addition to that, so to give you some more specific things to help you guys out as to what you should include, uh, you must again some simple things that you can include in the mission of telling them that I'm a good candidate is your experience, why you want to pursue this degree, and another thing that works very well is research about the university. So a simple trick here would be to suppose you're applying to a machine learning program or you're applying to a psychology program. What you would do is you would do very detailed research on the psychology department of that university. You can look up specific professors, that specific professor's work, research papers that that professor has done. You can look up things about that university in terms of if there is a psychology club, or you could look up things like in terms of getting placements, if that university has very strong placements for psychology students. And you can mention all of these things in your essay. That shows them that you are genuinely interested in their university, and it's not
Right.
just a general SOP that you're sending out to all universities. So again, I would highly suggest doing some detailed research on the university and using that in your SOP, like talking about a specific professor wanting to work with them or something like that.
Right. So we have a question here from Ankit. He is asking
Okay.
if we should clarify our weaknesses like our low GPA in our SOP.
So this would I would generally recommend not doing so, because once again, your statement of purpose is not a place for you to necessarily talk about anything else that's not aligned with your your purpose of applying to that university. So justifying, you don't really need to justify why it was a bad score in this 1 year or something like that, but on a case by case basis, and this is something like like a counselor can help you with. If that is something that's extremely apparent in your application and it's such a big deal, and it's because of a personal life event or something like that, after discussing with your counselor, you can maybe talk about it in a subtle way, include it so that the admissions committee can understand why this was not there and why this was there. But as a general practice, I don't justifying anything is not good. So you don't want to talk about um, why you are not studying in India, why you are going abroad. You don't need to justify that. For example, why you have a bad GPA is again case by case, but I would, as a general rule, recommend discuss it with someone who knows these things first, because it could be on a case by case basis as well.
All right. Okay. Moving on.
How long will a statement of purpose be? Again, a very highly asked question. Again, the word limit of a statement of purpose depends on the country, university, blah blah blah. But a standard best practice, I would say, about this is the actual word limit will be given to you with the prompt. So, for example, if the word limit is 800 to 1,000 words, I
Right.
would not uh, obviously stay within that range. But the best practice would be to be around 900 words. Don't push it to 1,000 words. Don't keep it under 800 words. Somewhere in the middle, the mid 50 of that range is a good idea, and I'll explain to you why. Uh, Again, like I said, admissions officers, the people that read these SOPs, read hundreds of them every day. So if your essay is seeming like you've made it seem longer, they can tell. They've been reading these essays for years. They read multiple a day. So write as it seems natural, and as a general quantitative goal, try to stay in the mid 50 of the range given. If it's a 700 to 1,000 word limit range, look at 850 words. Look at 800 to 850 words. That would be a best practice.
All right. Okay. Next question. How do you justify backlogs in SOP while applying to universities abroad?
Yeah, so very similar answer to what Ankit asked.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we basically answered it there, but I can repeat it as well. So I justifying a backlog is something that your SOP is not the right place to do this, because your SOP is supposed to be, why am I a good candidate? These are the reasons why you should take me. Obviously put in a more eloquent way, but that's the main goal. Justifying backlogs, again, discuss with someone who knows these things, discuss with a counselor if you can. Um, and justifying in general, according to me at least, would not be a good practice. If it is something that's a big, shining, like main part of your application, that like everything else is good, but your GMAT score is really bad, and it's because of some big personal situation that you went through during your GMAT exam, then that could be, after consulting with a counselor, then that you can discuss of ways of including that based on a case by case basis.
All right. Moving on. Okay. How to write an SOP if you're changing a course?
Right. So I've actually done this, so I can tell you from direct experience. Like I said, I was a psychology student and I transferred to a completely different program that I had nothing to do with. Again, we had a question about this, but I'll just repeat it. So if you're changing course, then there's a couple of things that you want to keep in mind. You don't want to write bad things about the course you were in. So you don't want to say, suppose you're transitioning from psychology to economics. You don't want to write about, oh, this, I didn't like psychology because the department was bad, this was bad, these professors were bad, I didn't get this. You try to focus on the transition aspect of the things. So focus on what led you to wanting to do a different course. What about the new course is appealing, and what changed in what you want from your degree or from your university experience that made you think that changing your course would be the best way of having a better university experience or getting the most out of your degree. Don't focus on these things were bad about this and therefore this program is better suited to my needs. Focus on the latter half of it.
All right. Yeah, we have a question from Harshit Soni. Like, should we
All
repeat
right.
the skill points in SOP that are also mentioned in our LOR?
Okay, so technically, from the perspective of the university, you're not supposed to know what's in your LOR as much. So repeating wouldn't necessarily be something that's looked down upon. But again, the skill points that you are talking about have to be very well connected to the rest of your SOP and what you're trying to achieve from that SOP. So it shouldn't, your SOP should not become a written version of your CV. Because that's something that happens a lot actually. The SOP just becomes I worked here, and then after that I worked here, I did this here, then I worked here, then I did this here, and these are my skills. Da 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 da. That's not what the SOP is supposed to be. Of course, you can include skill points that are very important to your application, which will definitely be mentioned in your LOR and your CV and all of that. It's important to mention those skill points, but don't make it seem like you've taken your CV and you're just writing out your CV in a written form.
All right. Okay. Moving on to the next. Yeah. How to organize statement of purpose for scholarship?
All right. Again, highly requested
Yeah.
question.
I,
So yeah. So statement of purpose of scholarship. So again, it's a statement of purpose. So you want to break down what the admissions committee is looking for. They're not looking for why you're applying to this program here. They're looking for why you're a good candidate for scholarship. So there's a very important distinction there. Um, while you can talk about your degree and why you want to do that briefly, the main goal of your scholarship would be to talk about why you are a good candidate to receive the scholarship that's being given. For that, again, I would do a lot of research on that specific scholarship. Many of these scholarships have like long histories and like famous people come out of these scholarships, and a lot of these scholarships have web pages where they talk about the kind of candidates they're looking for. Look for all of that, make your points according to that, and just write with the goal of answering the question through your SOP, why am I a good candidate to receive a merit or need-based scholarship of this university, of this scholarship.
all right. Okay, so we have reached the end of the presentation. If you have any questions, you can put them over chat and we can address them one by one. Okay, so we have a question from Sarath. What is your tip on making an SOP if we're applying to different universities, and what's the best way to simplify this task?
Okay. Yeah. So this is something that's like if you're smart about this, it can be very easy. So after you've written 2 or 3 SOPs, you will realize that a lot of the things are actually very similar between them. Only some things change. So your structure for lots of universities in terms of if you're applying for the same degree, which I'm assuming that you would be the same structure largely. Only some things would change. For example, I spoke about like talking about specific professors or specific programs or like small things in the university. You can switch those out, and sometimes after writing a few SOPs, you'll realize that you've written a very good conclusion or a very good introduction. You can just recycle those. So, for example, when I was applying, I wrote a very 3 or 4 SOPs in. I wrote a very good conclusion to one of my essays. So what I did then was I just copy pasted that conclusion and changed the university's name.
Right.
Now, don't do this with a full essay, obviously. That would be a very bad thing to do. But if you like, for example, after writing few SOPs, you will get better at it, and eventually you will write better SOPs, right? So after that, you will get better at your structure, so you can apply the same structure to each SOP and just switch out the information that you're putting in. But again, when you're doing something like this, be extremely careful because very often when like you're doing copy paste type things, you forget to change the university name, and if you're applying to NYU with an essay that says University of Pennsylvania, that's an automatic reject. So don't copy paste, but you can use the same structure, and that will just make it very easy. You'll see how your writing of an SOP will take 1 week, and then suddenly it'll take like half an hour, because you'll just be using the same structure and just switching out what you're saying based on what university you're applying to.
Okay, so we have a question from Anmol. He says
Yeah.
that he did a training on teardown and bench making and scored an A there, and he did it from Tata Technologies lab. Like, should he include this training in his SOP?
He did a training in teardown and bench marketing. If he's applying for a very similar field, like marketing or bench
No, it's
marketing,
yeah, marketing.
yeah. Then if that was a big moment of learning, and that's where he realized, like, after this training, this is why I realized I want to do an MBA in marketing. Then yes, 100%, please include that. Talk about that experience in detail. Talk about what you learned from that experience, what you did, and why that experience led you to wanting to apply to this university.
And we have another question from Saurav. How long on detail should the answer to what your long-term and short-term goals are?
Okay. Again, this would depend on the given word limit, obviously. But again, like I said, best practice would be to stay in the middle 50. What are your long-term and short-term goals specifically for that? Try and be as brief as possible. Don't make it like pointers. But in general, admissions officers don't like to read winding long stories about things that could have been said in 3 sentences. So
Right.
meet the word requirement, but don't try and say it in the simplest way possible, is the best way I can put this.
All right. So Anmol is asking, like, can you show your SOP? But like, yeah, just can you give you a brief idea of how you wrote exactly your SOP, and like what are the things you included first on a personal level?
All right. So I wrote an SOP for psychology. So this was a while ago, so I'm just gonna open it. Give me a second. Yeah. All right. So my SOP, psychology. So the way I structured it was I talked about a specific experience that I had, because that was the prompt I was responding to. The prompt was about a specific event or realization that led me to wanting to apply for this program. So what I started with an event that it was something that I'd gone for a training program in Uttarakhand, something like that. So I talked about that event, and then I connected it to a specific experience I had in that event, to why I wanted to study psychology. From there, I started talking about my interest in psychology a little bit, 2, 3 sentences about why I am interested in psychology, what I want to do with psychology in my life, or what I think. Then again, I started talking about my current experience in terms of the subjects that I had taken, the work experience I had in psychology, and then I spoke about one internship that I had done with Fortis Hospital. I spoke in detail about what I did in that internship and what I learned from that internship, and why that internship led me to becoming much more serious about psychology. And then I concluded. That was the basic structure of my SOP.
All right. So do we have any more questions? Okay, we have last question by Pramit. What is the difference between personal statement and statement of purpose?
There's no real difference.
Okay. Okay, we have another question by Sai Sampath. Can we add subheadings to our paragraphs?
Like if you want to break up your essay and say, like in this part of the essay, I will talk about that's a personal choice. If you want to do it in that creative manner, then there's no real rules that stop you from doing that. If you can do it well, then there's no reason for you not to. But that can again speak to a counselor about this. Show them your essay, because it's very easy to do that in a bad way as well. But if you can do it well, it separates your essay from every other essay, and that can be an advantage as well.
Right. Okay, so on this note, we have come to the end of this webinar. All right, thank you, Vidur, so much for joining us. And to our viewers, thank you so much. And for those of you who are watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss out any other webinars from AdmitKard.
Of course. Thank you,
All right.
everyone.
Thank you so much. See ya. Bye.